Hi, I'm Lenora. I'm the creator of The Bitchy Bookkeeper. What? Hey, you interrupted my intro. We're not editing this, remember? We're off to a great start. Okay, Kristen's gonna have a drink and I'm gonna try that again. Hi, I'm Lenora. I'm creator of The Bitchy Bookkeeper.
Hi, I'm Isabel, founder and firebrand of the Uprising Spark.
Hi, I'm Kristen, author of The Age of the Child, and today we are talking about, well, parents, selfish. And I realize that sounds like a really clickbaity sort of thing. It sounds like we're just going to heap on parents and trying to start a fight and everything, but we already did discuss whether child-free people are actually selfish as they've been called. And we had not yet had the interesting discussion that we had on our Instagram. So there are areas of that we didn't really explore. But since we did discuss child-free and selfishness, it's only fair, I think, to talk about selfishness and parenthood, or people who want to be parents, since that's also something that's brought up a lot in the child-free community, and in particular in the antinatalist community. But obviously those two things are very different, but it's worth talking about, I think. I have my own thoughts about it, but I want to start with Lenora.
Well, I was going to say that we are the three founding non-mothers of Childfree Girls.
That too.
In case no one has ever heard the podcast before. So the question is, do I think parents are selfish for having kids? Right?
Or do you have an opinion about parenthood and selfishness at all? Or like when it comes to the whole conversation about parenthood and selfishness, what is your thought?
My thought. Well, generally, I feel that parents want to have the parenthood experience. So it really is all about them initially. You know, I mean, a lot of times kids just happen, meaning unprotected sex, and okay, we're having a child. I hear a lot of that. So, you know, then they make the decision. And if the decision is to keep said potential child or future child, then that's one thing. But, you know, people who are, let's say, doing the marriage thing and the mortgage thing, and it's like, okay, next step, let's have a kid. Well, that's in their interest. They want to start a family. They want to experience all the joys and love that they hear that other parents experience. So initially, it really does come down to what they want. I mean, the potential being is not in existence. So there's nothing to say. And I personally don't subscribe to a being potentially saying, I want to come down and be a human, so you're going to be my parent. You know, some people subscribe to that, and that's fine. I don't. So I don't feel there's a soul. If you guys saw the movie Souls recently on Disney, a soul is not saying, hey, I want to be born. I'm going to pick you as the mom. You know, I don't subscribe to that. So if someone consciously chooses to have children, it is about them. It's about their experience that they want. So, okay, that's the right to choose. And it does affect that choice to have a child affects that child, and it affects the community around them. So going by the definition of selfish, isn't it selfish? You know, because it's affecting somebody else. Kristen, we can't hear you. I love this already.
Gestures everywhere. Yeah. I like the conversation. I know someone who would probably also argue that souls do decide when to come into existence, I guess. And it's a really interesting theory until you think about all the people in existence who have a really tough time from the beginning. Maybe you can't choose which parents you go to. Maybe that's part of it. And maybe there are just a whole bunch of different theories and caveats with the choosing to be a soul on the earth. But if you do get to choose to be born, and if you get to choose who you're born to, you must come into it with very, very little information and just kind of, you know, throw a dart at a map or something.
Yeah, I actually do subscribe a little bit to that, but that's a whole different conversation. What I wanted to say about what I think about, you know, parents being selfish, I was thinking about this really hard this week because I think my thoughts about this have actually changed. I remember maybe a year and a half ago, I was like, all parents are selfish, right? Like that was my train of thought, because I haven't heard a single reason from anyone that makes me think, oh, they're doing this, for the child, right? And I was reading about how there's this guy, he wrote a book. I'm going to put it on the comments when we put this up, when we upload this in YouTube. I don't have the information in front of me right now, but he was saying, I mean, his argument is, how could you do something good for somebody who doesn't exist? Like, how is that serving that person, which it isn't a person, right? So, that conversation, I think it's always been interesting. And I think it's an ongoing debate, of course. And, you know, now I feel that the reasons to have a child, a biological child, for me, like I said, I haven't even heard the first reason that I feel, yeah, this is definitely for the child. But parents who become parents and they adopt by adoption, I think that's selfless, actually. I think that's putting aside that thing, that thing about having their own kid is a little bit narcissistic, to be honest. I want to have a mini me. I want to see how my kids are going to look like. I want somebody to carry on my name. I want to inherit everything all my riches to somebody. All of those reasons are a little bit narcissistic. Whereas people who are like, I want to be a parent, but I definitely want to do this for somebody who already exists, somebody who wasn't allowed to have a life, like a proper life, a decent life for any human being, and then they adopt a kid who's been abandoned or a kid who lost their parents. I think that's selfless. And I think foster parents and adoptive parents are selfless, and biological parents, I'm still debating on that.
I will say about the foster parent thing, and of course, this is not from personal experience, but there are people that foster kids for the money, and there are people that adopt kids for the optics, especially in these days of Instagram. So
How do you adopt a kid for the optics?
Oh, since we're not editing this, I don't know. I don't want to slander anybody, but there was a story of an influencer who adopted a child who had special needs and then had to rehome the child.
Right.
So, you would hope that, and there's more to that story, but you would hope that they had the best intentions and maybe something happened, but this did not go over well. So, if you are an influencer making money off of how many kids you have and that sort of thing, and you're looking for more, we do live in that age. So
I don't think that someone has kids because they want them, I don't think is any more. I mean, sure, it's selfish because you're involving somebody else's life, but I don't think it's selfish in the way that makes selfish a bad thing. I think there are people who are perfectly fit to have kids. They want to share their love with a kid. It's all you could say, I'm not saying not wanting children isn't natural. It's natural to not want children. It's natural to want children. I don't see anything inherently wrong with it. And I see selfish as an inherently negative word. And even though if you go to the extreme and you think about all the potential hardships that could befall a person in their life, you could argue, well, it's totally selfish to bring someone in without their consent into this planet. That's probably true, but that's not the way I think. I think if you can afford it, and if you're prepared to take care of a child for the rest of its life, and you're going to be loving and all that, fine, great. I do think it's selfish to know that there's a good chance of your kid not having a good life and doing it anyway. There's a woman who was profiled on the Today Show earlier in 2020, who had eye cancer. She had rhinoblastoma. She knew that having it meant she had a 50% chance of giving it to her kid. So she had one, it got the eye cancer. She had another kid also diagnosed with eye cancer. The other one was diagnosed with eye cancer. They just kept having them because they wanted them. And she said that before they had these kids, they talked about it, all the ways they could go and what was best for them. And then later, after they had a couple of kids with this eye cancer and they're going through chemo, before they're 3 years old. And she lost her own eye when she was a kid to this cancer. After they had a couple of kids, they really wanted more. So they thought, hey, we'll roll the dice. I mean, this is actually part of the article. So I think that's selfish. I think it's selfish that there are parents who were profiled in a study of people who have Huntington's disease. That's also 50% passing down to your kids. And Huntington's disease is absolutely awful. There's no cure. It involves degeneration of your muscles, your mental health, your abilities until anywhere from 10 to 17 years later, you die after a potentially horrible experience. There's like 30% of the people who were studied in various studies, it was either close to 40% in one study, 15% in another, who, even though they tested positive for this, decided, I'm going to do it. Some people felt guilty after making that choice, and I guess, hey, and then some people, were kind of they did it because they were hoping there would eventually be a cure. Either way, you are knowingly inviting a life into this world. I mean, imagine discovering you have Huntington's disease, what that's like for the rest of your life and what you're inflicting. It's just that, I think, is the height of selfishness. I think if I hardly have $2 and I decide to get pregnant, that's selfish. There's just, when it comes down to what you want over the very real possibility of your kid having a hard time, that's where I think you're just a terrible person to have a kid.
I don't understand how there's not more outrage about something like that.
That's a thing.
I mean, it's as someone who apparently doesn't care because I don't have children. God, I think about the well-being of kids a lot in the way that, like, are you insane? I mean, it's just, especially purposely having children, I just, you gotta wonder, you really gotta wonder. And the fact that, okay, these articles are being written, I don't know what is the intent of writing those articles, to say, oh, you're having kids anyway, or to bring awareness to the disease, or
the Huntington's one was a study. That was just a study. A lot of people have done studies on people who have chosen to have kids, even knowing they have a 50% chance of giving their kids Huntington's. The Today Show story was, oh, the tragedy. This poor mother has kids with cancer. No, the tragedy, this woman kept having children. And that's the whole problem with pronatalism. That's why I think discussing the selfishness of certain kinds of parents is important. It's not to blast parents. I love parents. My dad was one, love him to death. All my friends are parents, except for you guys. I don't have a problem with parents, but I do think we have to, since it's so taboo to even to present a story on a morning show that it's tragic that these kids have cancer, and completely ignore the fact that it's tragic that this woman continued to have children. That says so much about how we do not give a shit about kids. We just, it's all parents and what they want and their tender hearts.
Yes. And how many sponsors can they get? And crowdfunding.
I don't think she was selling anything, but she sure got some sympathy.
Oh,
well. She wanted to raise awareness. She wanted to raise awareness of cancer.
Yeah.
Like she didn't really know about it.
We have comments here from our audience. So Jackie says, I believe if people truly want to have kids or to be parents, it shouldn't matter if the child is biological or not. Like what's being discussed now. So high genetic risks leading to adoption would be a better option. Still totally agree with that.
Who's coming to collect who with a siren in the background?
Not me.
You're coming for me. I'm gonna mute now. Megan, I don't think most foster adopted parents are being selfish. I think bio parents are being selfish, but think that the majority of bio parents honestly don't realize that they are coming across that way. Absolutely. I completely agree with you. It's like, ask someone why they have kids. Most people don't have a straight answer. So, and ask someone when they're like, they're not parents yet, and they're like, I want to have kids. I want to have 1, 2, 5, 10, whatever. Ask them why. It's because it's the next thing to do, right? It's expected of me, or I'm married. Shouldn't I start having kids? So if they don't even know why they're having parents, then, they wouldn't know why they're selfish.
And again, that speaks to the grooming that we all are raised in, whatever society you live in. You know, it's just the automatic assumption. That's what you do. Well, that's not an answer. Well, it is, but it's not always a good one.
I was just reading Genevieve's novel.
Go ahead and read it. I have like, it's pouring here, so that's what you're hearing in the background. I'm gonna mute myself
Okay.
for a little.
Isabel, did you already talk about Genevieve's?
No.
Okay. So Genevieve says she works with a nonprofit that focuses on the link between unsustainable population growth and climate change. And on that basis, she does think it's selfish because it affects everyone around you as well as the life you're making. And the maternal death rate in the US is pretty high as well. Yeah, it's ridiculously high for such a, advanced nation. Um, if you're able to provide a loving environment, your child looking like you being the condition on which you provide that environment is kind of silly. Can't get behind that. So is it you advocate or the nonprofit you work for? You all advocate adopting if you want a family? Yeah. I can see the fear. Like I can really understand wanting kids and being afraid to adopt because you just don't know what kind of genetic predispositions they're going to have behaviorally, maybe, or you don't know what they underwent, in between the time they were born and when you finally got to them. So I can sympathize and I can see, I can imagine just being afraid to take that risk and ending up with a Kevin. I'm assuming everyone's seen, we need to talk about
I have
Kevin.
to watch that. That's
You
my
really have
viewing
to.
for tonight.
Very good.
I like Catherine's comment. I have two friends who are in their early 30s and openly admit they are having children so they can be grandmothers. I have never heard that before, and that
That's a long game.
that that is. I mean,
the pressure those kids are going to be under.
yeah, I'm all for long-term planning.
Yes.
That's a lot of time between and I'm assuming then they haven't or they are having children. That's a long time.
It's like people who get married because they want to be old together.
Yeah. So what do you do in the meantime?
I know.
I've always been a long-term planner, but I had to learn to enjoy the present, to enjoy now, right? Because it's not guaranteed that anything is going to happen in the future. You're not guaranteed that you're going to live that long to see them. So I would hope that your friends are enjoying now as well, because that's a long time to wait. And then if they become child-free, if the kids are child-free, I mean, I would laugh.
Be like the best universe, like the best joke that the universe
yes, totally.
I want grandkids and then all their children are child-free.
Yeah. Like, what's the joke? Life takes the plans or laughs at the plans that you make, I mean, seriously. That's a new one.
It'd be easier on the kids if they were infertile, because if they choose not to have children, that's just such a, you see a lot on our page and elsewhere, people who, the pressure from family isn't always funny, isn't always easy to deal with. And it's like, it can actually persuade people to have kids they don't want. And I didn't even get that kind of pressure from my family, but I do remember the weight and the resentment and the anger I felt just because I knew from somewhere, the ether, that I was expected to have kids. And, just the expectation and my not quite understanding that I didn't have to, I was in that really delicate place where I thought I had to feel rebellious about it instead of just, nope, don't want it. That's a lot of, it's angering, it just kind of, it's this weight you carry around with you every single day.
It totally is. I remember in my 20s, I remember moments being in my shower, getting ready to go to an event or some social thing. And I remember rehearsing what I was going to say to people who are asking, are you dating someone? Are you going to get married? Those questions. And I remember being so exhausted. And this was before I realized that I could control the narrative. But looking back, I realized I did a lot of that in my 20s. I felt a lot of that pressure, even though I knew I wasn't going to have kids. It was just psyching myself up to have the conversation. And I wasn't yet ready, or I didn't have the wherewithal to have the public conversations I have now about it. So it is exhausting. And it's something that people, child free or otherwise, need to be aware of, because, you you should be feel free in your choice. And it takes a while for us to get there, but just I'm glad to be out of my, like, in my 30s now. I just feel like I don't care. I can have this conversation all day long because I do. But like in a social setting, I don't have to psych myself up for that. I have the answers and I'm ready, but it takes a while to get there. So if you're in that situation where you're trying to figure out a speech in your head before going over to grandma's house after COVID, it gets easier with time.
The only parents or wannabe parents who have to worry about that pressure are teenagers. I mean, like, if you're a teenager who, oops, I think I'm pregnant, that's the only time you ever have to worry about what anybody thinks about you getting pregnant. Otherwise, no matter what the conditions are, people are programmed to say congratulations. They're programmed to feel congratulations because you assume anybody who gets pregnant did it by choice. But as we know, that's not necessarily true. But it's never questioned, ever, ever.
I don't say congratulations to anybody, even my friends now. Do you guys? Isabel, Kristen, do you guys?
When they announce
when they announce a pregnancy, yeah. Do you congratulate?
No, I just say there's this word in Spanish. It's like, it's not really congratulations. It's like, I wish you a lot of happiness. That's all. Like, that's all.
That's nice, actually. I should think about doing that because I don't feel right anymore because I don't know the circumstances. Generally, it's okay, but we all just assume it's a happy situation.
That's true.
Right?
I want to bring up, to this conversation, Kristen, that exchange that you had with some people in our feed about the word selfish.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's the literal meaning and then there's like
the adopted meaning.
Yeah, exactly.
The adopted meaning that has no relationship with the actual meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah, that one.
Because we get called selfish all the time, right? Your child free equals selfish. So it's a little bit jarring to know that that's not the real meaning of selfish, right, Kristen?
You mean the difference between selfish as a bad thing and what the word is for just doing your life your way without hurting anybody?
Which is self-interest, right?
Yeah.
Self-preservation, self-interest is a whole different thing, right?
Yeah, huge difference.
And the reason I wanted to bring it up is because, what we're talking about parents being selfish. I mean, what is about having children that is for self-preservation? What is about having children that is for self-interest? And that actually brought me back to a conversation that I had with a couple of people who are telling me, how all human beings are afraid of being dead? Like, everyone's afraid of death. That's like the thing, like the one thing that most human beings have in common. And like having some people, like maybe not consciously, but having a child is a way to like cheat death in a way. It's like, this is my legacy. My DNA is going to keep on, like my DNA is going to carry on without me in a way, right? So it's like, I can die, but I'm still going to be in the world. There's a piece of me that's going to stay here. So is that selfish? Is that self-preservation?
Is that insanity? I mean, I get it. But personally, as a creative person, I always thought it was more appealing to create something from your brain as opposed to your birth canal, even though we have them for that reason. Which brings me to Kristen's book, The Age of the Child. It's not easy writing a novel. And Kristen gave birth to that book, which actually a terrible segue because I did want to mention that, given the topic of the selfish people procreating and the birthright or the parental licensing, you had to prove that concept in the book where you had to prove your worthiness or the reasons behind having a kid, and they would decide whether or not you could have a child.
Yeah.
Right.
But then, you do have characters who sneak through. Mm-hmm. The thing for those who haven't read it, and I'm assuming most of you haven't, we've gone beyond Roe v. Wade being overturned. So now there are kids everywhere. So that's a problem, not only because there are kids everywhere, but because a lot of people who shouldn't have kids are having them. So they're being like left on sidewalks, left on people's porches. Bad things are happening. So they enact parent licensing, and you have to get evaluated before you can get your license. And they check your fitness for parenthood, your levels of empathy and compassion, and whether you have a family care plan. You don't have to have a lot of money, but you need to have people around you who can help you if something happens, just like with the military. Like if you deploy, you have to have a family care plan. But you can sneak through, as one character does. Once you get your license, then you can have your sterilization removed so you can get pregnant. But there are hackers and you can get through it. And one character decides she wants to have a baby, but only because anyone who's gone through this process is on high. I mean, you're very revered because you're clearly a very good person if you can have a baby. So there are those. And I guess that's a method of also preserving a legacy, is proving that you're a good person. I mean, the way we look at parenthood, even now, is mothers are wonderful.
They're on pedestals. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you know, if you were having a hard time and say you needed your bills paid, or if you needed some sort of assistance in other ways, all you have to do is present your kids. And you would get on People magazine, or you would get in, you would get attention from your friends and family online, and a greater community just by presenting children, right? You know, you would.
And we have spoken about this before, you know, children being social currency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one thing that people are like, hi, nice to meet you. So you have kids? Like, that's the first thing that adult people connect on, right? It's one of the, like that, or what do you do for work? What's, you know? So it being social currency, we can also say, you know, some people, I don't know if this is a motivation for anyone, I hope not, but there might be some people out there who only have children so they can fit in certain circles, social circles, or certain communities. Actually, I know there is, especially in, I think you guys mentioned it in the chat, religious communities. If there's like a very strong tradition of family being mom, dad, and children, if you don't want to have kids, not because you can't, but because you don't want to, you can be shunned out of that community. So yeah, I mean, it weighs on people. Sometimes it's not even that what you want, and you have to do it.
And this is where bringing awareness to the child-free choice is important, because a lot of people do have kids because they didn't realize they have there's a choice otherwise. You know, and we're not talking only abortion or things like that. We're talking about like younger, we're talking about birth control and education and sex education, and just awareness even from parents telling their kids, you don't have to have children. You know, I mean, having the conversation younger and earlier and more encompassing than just when you get older and have kids, you know, instead of going that direction, it's more, there is a choice involved, because that would be so helpful, as I think all of us could attest to if we found that out younger, you know, in various ways.
I just want to say one quick thing before we wrap up. And because we're on the subject of selfishness, Megan said that she thinks we are all selfish in a way. I agree. Humans in general are probably all selfish in a way. I don't deny that. I have been selfish. I have done selfish things. I have hidden crackers from my husband because that's selfish.
Of course you
However, when I have the argument about the use of the words that pertains to the child-free decision, my only point is that it is not selfish to not have a child. There's nothing selfish about it. You might be a selfish person all day long. That's great. You might recognize that you as an individual are selfish and you don't have what it takes to devote as much of yourself as you would have to a child. Perfectly understand that. However, the choice itself is not selfish because you're not hurting anybody. You're not disadvantaging anybody. You're not inconveniencing anybody by not having a child. Doesn't count that you're upsetting your parents.
I was just going to say.
No, okay. It's not self. Like if someone tells me I'd really, really be happy if you jumped out that window, it's not selfish of me to say no. It is unreasonable of them to ask me to do that with my life. It's not far. I wouldn't die, but it would hurt.
I'm on the third. My office here is on the third floor. It would hurt if I jumped out of my window.
I'm on a fifth floor. I would die.
Okay. So. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, nobody wants us to die. We have another live to do still, so let's stay alive for a little bit longer, please.
Yes, and we hope, and we do have to wrap up. So we hope you guys who are visiting, we hope you all had a good time. We hope you'll show up next time. The chat was awesome. I'm sorry if we didn't get to everything in there, but I think we got to most of them.
It went by way too fast. I could talk for like 3 more hours, but
and I do, and that's why we always edit.
I'll be here by myself talking. Okay, when you guys are all gone.
All right, so that's it. We've never done a live before, so we apologize for this little glitchiness at the end. I'm not sure how to end this actually.
Well, the same way we end our episode.
Yeah, we have to do the same thing. Thank you for
Okay.
watching it. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for watching. Thank you all for being here, whether you are live or catching this later. If you want to get in touch with us, you can reach us at childfreegirls@gmail.com.
And if you want to reach us on social media, we're very active, particularly on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Those are like the three main social platforms. We're also on Pinterest. And I think that's it, right?
TikTok occasionally, but not really.
Occasionally. Yeah. And
we're on Amazon. Behind me, we're
oh,
on
yes,
Amazon.
we're on Amazon. We have this amazing book. It's right behind Lenora. Childfree Girls Come for Food for Thought. You can get her on Amazon.
And of course, we always ask a question at the end of our episodes. And today's question is, we never actually really figured out exactly what our question is today.
We'll go with the one.
Pardon me?
Let's go with the one that Isabel brought up.
Which is, well, I'm just, you know what are your thoughts? Do you think that parents are selfish? Do you think that having a child is selfish? This may not be exactly what we agreed on, but
No, that was it.
No, that was
Okay.
it. That was it.
That was it. I was just laughing at you.
Happy live episode, everybody.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye. No, you say bye.
No, you say bye.
Oh my God, I'm leaving.
You leave first.
I'm going.
Bye.
Bye.